Tanse, welcome to a special weekend wrap-up edition of APTN National News. I'm Echaquan. It was a sea of orange on Parliament Hill on September 30th as hundreds of people gathered for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. APTN's Fraser Needham starts us off.
The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation event typically attracts a broad cross-section of people. Indigenous, non-Indigenous, young and old. One of those people was Cody Coyote, who works with youth. He says there's no shortage of things a young person can learn by attending an event like this.
Right, so whatever they might hear today, whether it's a story from speaking with some of the survivors that are here, or maybe the program, my hope is that they're going to carry that with them, and then they're going to share it with the ones that are coming up after them, and that sort of thing.
At the same time, Coyote says with it being a decade since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released its final report, he worries progress is not moving fast enough.
In order for reconciliation, for that word to have any meaning, there needs to be reconciliation. There needs to be the prioritization of the 94 calls to action from the TRC. Like, if we're looking at things and how many have been implemented since it initially was released, like why is it taking so long?
The art of the Anishinaabe territory. That is the
residential school survivor Richard Echaquan Kistabish was also at the event and was one of the keynote speakers. He says he has been speaking about the legacy of residential schools since he left one in the mid-1960s. But it's only recently that non-Indigenous Canadians have begun to take notice.
At the beginning, I was just me alone doing all these celebrations because I wanted to talk about the issue of residential school and the impact that creates in our community. So at the beginning, I have only one person who attend my conference. Today, it's 1 million. It's amazing. This is crazy.
Echaquan Kistabish adds the thing about the National Day is you never know who you might have to tell the story to.
Like me this morning, I was wearing this T-shirt, and someone came from Japan, I guess. He looked like a Japanese or a Chinese guy, and he says, "What's the 215 means?" He saw my number, so I have to tell that story.
Governor General Mary Simon and Prime Minister Mark Carney were also keynote speakers at Tuesday's event. Carney says Canada cannot rebuild its economy without Indigenous people as equal partners.
Well, it's vital that we build. It's more important. It is vital how we build. With Indigenous leadership, Indigenous prosperity, Indigenous opportunity. These must be foundational from the start.
I am making a need you now.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thank you, Fraser. In Eskasoni First Nation in Mi'kmaq, known as Nova Scotia today on the East Coast, the youth and elders honored survivors of residential schools and the importance of saving the Mi'kmaq language. APTN video journalist Angel Moore reports.
I'm here at the Eskasoni Mi'kmaq Nation, Unama'ki, Mi'kmaq for Cape Breton, where about 50 people walk through the middle of the community to this monument that honors survivors and Rita Joe's poem, I Lost My Talk, which is about how the Shubenacadie Indian Residential School forbid children from speaking Mi'kmaq and the hope that the language will never be lost. That is 15-year-old Chrissy Gould. She speaks fluent Mi'kmaq and represents Eskasoni as the queen of the 2025 Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Summer Games. She offers advice to the youth.
We need to seek our elders and our people all over Unama'ki to be able to learn the language and understand it so we can pass it down to next generations to come.
Gloria Gould is a survivor. She says today is about never forgetting and protecting the Mi'kmaq language.
Young people should honor their grandparents, make sure they keep on talking the Mi'kmaq language, especially to the younger ones. Never forget that you are Mi'kmaq, and the language is a very, very important thing to remember, to teach, and not to lose that language.
As emotional as the day is, Chrissy says it's important to remember and honor the survivors.
Even it may be hard for our survivors to come out and speak about what they've been through. But it's important to know because it's history. We need to remember what happened and it won't happen again.
This monument was placed here by community members over 10 years ago, and it continues to be a place of reflection and memory for all of them. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Echaquan, Unama'ki.
Last Wednesday, the government of Saskatchewan issued an apology to Isle Cross residential school survivors in the north. An agreement in principle was also signed, promising restitution for survivors who suffered abuse. APTN reporter Rachel May has the details.
And today, on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, I apologize to you.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe was in Isle Cross Monday to apologize to survivors of the residential school there. Along with his apology, Moe announced a $40.2 million agreement in principle based on 4 pillars of concern to provide compensation to survivors.
Those 4 major pillars are that the former students shared a common experience, that there was individual abuse, that the community requires legacy, healing, wellness, education, language, culture, and commemoration. And finally, the addressing of the legal fees, the disbursements, and the costs associated with the administration of the entirety of that settlement.
The provincial government and Catholic Church operated the Isle Cross residential school from January 1st, 1860 to December 31st, 1976. Moe says he hopes today's apology and agreement will be a stepping stone towards building a better future for generations to come.
Each and all of us. We have a past in Canada. It's not all great, but we need to acknowledge it. And we need to work together on understanding it before we can ever take those first steps forward in rebuilding our communities and making our province and our nation a better place for that next generation and for our kids.
Buckley Belanger is the Member of Parliament for Desnethi, Missinippi, Churchill River, where Isle Cross is located. He went to this school after his mother passed away. He thanks survivors for their advocacy to ensure that Isle Cross's voice is heard, as the school was not eligible for the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. Belanger then shared a message on behalf of the Government of Canada.
And that same little guy that was standing at the edge of the rink and sleeping in a really large dorm, he can now say on behalf of the Prime Minister of Canada and the Government of Canada, I am pleased to see the Isle Cross residential school file finally completed from the province's perspective.
In March 2025, the Government of Canada signed an agreement in principle with Isle Cross survivors to support investments in commemoration, healing, language, and culture. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Moving to the Northwest Territories, APTN video journalist Bruce Dela Cruz was able to cover Yellowknife's Every Child Matters March and get the northern perspective on truth and reconciliation.
Hi there. I'm here at the Sambake Park in Yellowknife, where the Every Child Matters March took place, organized by community member Caitlin White-Keys. I was able to sit down with some people to gather their thoughts on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation this year. These are a few of those conversations. Can you tell us what we just took part in?
We just took part in the march to Sambake Park, just like in remembrance for survivors of residential school and victims of residential school as well.
So I'm from Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation, Treaty 6 territory in northern Saskatchewan. And I'm here today for my grandmother and all of her siblings who went to residential school.
All my ancestors, my grandparents, my mother and father, my siblings, children, grandchildren, all survivors of residential school.
Today, one of the signs that I've painted said 15 out of 94, and that's the progress that the Canadian government has made on the calls to action. It is so important for us to put pressure on the government for them to do the right thing, because without the voices of the people behind them, the government isn't a government.
It's important to show up every day, not just on September 30th. Like I said, Yellowknife is doing a lot of work to recognize us, and it's good to keep in mind that every other day of the year we're still here, we're still surviving, and we're still dealing with that trauma.
Is there anything you'd like to say to all these survivors today?
I want every survivor to know that they matter and that we will continue to show up for them until the actions are fulfilled.
I feel you. Been there. Living it. I hope you come through.
Bruce de la Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Thank you, Bruce. A recent protest in front of Manitoba's legislative building was held, calling for the removal of MLA and Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine from cabinet. We'll tell you why when we come back. Kininasko Mitten, thank you for staying with us. The Nahanni Must Go protest rally outside the Manitoba legislature on Wednesday heated up when counter-protesters showed up in support of the MLA and Families Minister. And as APTN Sav Jonesa reports, the rally comes on the heels of smashed windows and firebombing at the minister's constituency office over the past few weeks.
Protesters rallied for the resignation of Manitoba Cabinet Minister Nahanni Fontaine on Wednesday, the day after her constituency office was firebombed. Roughly 50 people came out to the Manitoba legislature. Some said Fontaine doesn't advocate for everyone in Manitoba. Protester Colin Watson is a former Canadian Armed Forces crewman. He's also a politician with the People's Party of Canada. He read messages between him and Fontaine from earlier this year.
She replies saying, "Take a deep breath, little guy. Oh, is that how you talk to your ex-military? Is that how you talk to Métis, wounded ex-military folks that serve their country?"
The Nahanni Must Go rally was planned after Fontaine shared a post from an Instagram user last month. The post condemned American right-wing activist Charlie Kirk the day after he was assassinated. An online petition calling for her removal currently has just under 10,000 signatures. A couple dozen counter-protesters showed up to support Fontaine.
Every fiber in my body just willed me to be here.
Casey Abraham says there is a strong political divide in the province.
Like especially with Nahanni's office being burned and Bernadette's being damaged the days before. I mean, that just proves how much divide there is in this province, and it shouldn't be that way.
One protester tried to speak with the Fontaine supporters ahead of the rally speeches, but was met with turned backs. Speaker Max Gnest referred to Fontaine as evil and directed his anger towards her supporters, interrupting the rally.
These people are freaks. What you're seeing here is uncivilized, barbaric behavior. Do you hear that microphone screeching? That's some lady yelling into a mic. What is that behavior? That is beyond unhuman.
Barb Guimond, a longtime advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous people, sat between both sides. She says she doesn't agree with the views of the Nahanni Must Go rally, but does believe Fontaine isn't fit for the ministerial position.
I don't condone hate, I don't condone violence, I don't condone the fact that her building was destroyed. But Nahanni should work with all people. And she has been ignoring the families that she's supposed to be working for. And she doesn't. And she says she's inclusive, but she's not. She leaves out certain families from MMIW. And yes, I believe she should step down.
Inside the legislative building, Premier Wab Kinew called the Nahanni Must Go protesters, quote, goofballs. He says the attacks against Fontaine and MLA Bernadette Smith's offices seem targeted.
Recently, there was a protest outside of my constituency office. It was 300 people, I think one of the outlets reported, but nobody thought to light a match. So it does seem like there's a gender angle at work here. And, you know, this happening on September 30th, this happening to the first two Indigenous women appointed to Manitoba's cabinet, it seems like there's an Indigenous angle to this as well.
There is no known correlation between the Nahanni Must Go protesters and the vandalism affecting Smith and Fontaine, as police say there are currently no arrests or suspects. Early Thursday, Fontaine spoke out about the firebombing for the first time at an unrelated event.
It's not something that's just over in a couple of days. This is something that we're going to carry with us for the rest of our lives.
She says these incidents aren't just an attack on her and Smith, but an attack on community.
We worked hard to be here. We continue to work hard for our responsibilities, for our departments, for our communities, for our relatives, and no amount of attacks will ever push us out of this.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
September 28th marked 5 years since the death of Joyce Echaquan. The Atikamekw woman from Manawan, Quebec, was denied proper health care in 2020. Joyce's principal office held a tribute for Echaquan over the weekend, and as APTN Savannah Craig reports, some disagree with the way the Quebec government has responded over the past 5 years.
J'ai juste ouvert 2-3 secondes puis j'étais pas capable.
Senator Michelle Odette remembers her reaction while watching Joyce Echaquan's livestream in 2020. Amidst severe pain, Echaquan livestreamed the racism she experienced from nurses at Joliette Hospital hours before her death.
En attendant qu'on utilise les systèmes.
Odette participated in a conference commemorating 5 years since Echaquan's death.
The framework of this plan is rooted in Joyce's principle,
where panelists address what's changed and not changed when it comes to Indigenous people's equitable access to health care.
The rage that I felt that day or that night and the following days, it's still present, it's still inside of me.
Justice for Joyce! Justice for Joyce! Justice for Joyce!
One of the responses to Echaquan's death is Joyce's principle. It calls for all Indigenous people to have equal access to social and health services without discrimination. Since Echaquan's death on September 28, 2020, some institutions have adopted this principle, including the Quebec College of Physicians. But the government of Quebec has not.
Joyce, c'est notre George Floyd.
Then Quebec Liberal Party critic for Indigenous Affairs Gregory Kelly fought for the adoption of Joyce's principle in Quebec's National Assembly 2 months after Echaquan's death.
And it was rejected, mostly because of 2 words, systemic racism.
Quebec still refuses to acknowledge the existence of systemic racism in the province.
Lorsqu'on parle de racisme systémique, on n'a pas la même vision.
Minister responsible for relations with First Nations and Inuit, Ian Lafreniere, was unable to speak with us in a video interview. But his office told APTN News some people fixate on the term systemic racism, while Quebec believes the root cause must be attacked. In an email, press officer for Lafreniere's office, Maxime Tardif, said, "We have integrated several key elements of Joyce's principle into Bill 32 on the implementation of cultural safety in the healthcare system. We also conducted 2 major awareness campaigns on Indigenous realities in order to better inform and raise awareness among the entire population." For Michelle Odette, Quebec has not done enough.
I hope that we change for a new government that will embrace Joyce's principle, and right away after embracing, recognizing that there is systemic racism, not only discrimination, but racism.
Quebec is scheduled to go to the polls to choose the next provincial government in October 2026. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Trois-Rivières, Quebec.
The acclaimed Bear Grease musical recently made a stop in Winnipeg. Julia Ross has that story when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Bear Grease is an indigenized version of the 1978 hit musical Grease. The production has just finished its off-Broadway run in New York City over the past 2 months, and the all-Indigenous cast just completed their first stop back on the road across Canada in Winnipeg, Manitoba, with 2 sold-out shows. Julia Ross reports.
Let's watch Grease. And Summer Lovin' came on, and he looks at me and goes, Summer snagging had me a blast. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Summer snagging happened so fast. And then he goes, I met a girl, she's Enoch Cree. And I went, I met a boy, he's not related to me. And we started laughing, and it was hilarious. And we said, wouldn't it be amazing if there was an indigenous version of Grease?
Crystal Lightning and her husband Cloud created Bear Grease the musical in their basement during the pandemic. The production was originally planned to have a short run at the Edmonton Fringe Festival, but audiences wanted more.
Ani, Tanza, hello, my name is Amy Bosch. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I am a Bear Grease lover, as you can see. Big, beautiful pink auntie.
Bear Grease was performing off-Broadway in New York City for over 2 months, and after a short break, the cast is back on the road now performing across Canada. The first stop on their tour was Winnipeg, with 2 sold-out shows at the Burton Cummings Theatre.
Starting in New York to coming to my hometown was, amazing. We did about 2 months in New York. It was the most amazing experience, different crowd every night performing.
Mikey Harris is from Saugeen First Nation and has been starring as Butta in Bear Grease.
Be able to tell people I'm from Saugeen First Nation in New York City, just a little res kid, living in New York on Broadway and just down the street from all these huge musicals and where all these stars are, and just I really repped hard for Manitoba and my family and where I'm from and the dance, so it's really a huge honor and I'm blessed I can do it.
As part of the indigenizing process of Grease, Harris incorporated jigging into the show, with Bear Grease Lightning as a standout number.
It's my favorite section because I get to put jigging in there. And we're taking jigging across the world, I guess, with the Bear Grease Lightning. And yesterday when I came up there, I couldn't even hear the music. That's how loud it was.
Bear Grease features a roundy-style version of Hopelessly Devoted to You. A song sung in Cree, Indigenous fashion, beadwork, humor, and language.
Bear Grease is the indigenous version of Grease. So we took the classic 1978 musical and we just indigenized it through fashion, language, our humor, and just kind of made it very specific. Plugged in indigenous actors, and then instead of them wearing poodle skirts, we put bears and ribbons on it. So it's still an A-line skirt. We still have, the crinoline underneath. It's like, what if we never were colonized? This is what it would look like.
You can follow Bear Grease behind the scenes on social media and see them perform as they complete their Canadian tour with their next stop in the East Coast. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your weekend newscast for this Saturday, October 4th. We're back again on Monday for your daytime and evening newscasts. And you can always read more Indigenous news at aptnnews.ca. From our HQ in downtown Winnipeg, Kwana Hai Hai Miigwech, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.